My name is Penelope Hayes, and for 3 years, I paid my parents $700 a week. Not because they were sick, not because they were struggling, but because somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that money could buy something I'd never had: their approval, their love, their presence. I was 32 when this story begins, living in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Sacramento with my daughter Emma. She was 6 years old then. With my dark curls and her father's green eyes, the only thing he left behind before disappearing into a life I was no longer part of. Emma was my entire world. My reason for waking up at 5 in the morning to work double shifts as a medical billing specialist. My reason for smiling when my body ached and my bank account hovered dangerously close to empty. But my parents, Robert and Diana Hayes, they were a different story. They lived 40 minutes away in the house I grew up in. A beautiful craftsman with a wraparound porch and a garden my mother tended like it was her only child. Which, in many ways, I suppose it was. My childhood was spent watching them pour love into everything except me. The house, the garden, their social club, their friends, their image. I was the accident. The unplanned pregnancy that interrupted my mother's career as a real estate agent and my father's dreams of early retirement. They never said it out loud, but I felt it in every sigh, every misrecital, every time they looked at me like I was a bill they couldn't afford to pay. When Emma was born, I thought things might change. I thought becoming grandparents would soften them, open some door in their hearts that had been locked my entire life. It didn't. They saw her exactly 3 times in her first year, and each visit felt like an obligation they were checking off a list. So I started paying them. It began innocently enough. My father mentioned their property taxes had gone up. I sent them $500. My mother complained about the cost of her medications. I added another $200. Week after week, month after month, the payments became routine, automatic, expected, and in return, I got phone calls. Brief, transactional conversations where my mother would ask how I was doing in a voice that suggested she was reading from a script. My father barely spoke at all, just grunted his approval when I confirmed the money had been sent. But they came around more. Not often, but more. They'd stop by for an hour on a Sunday afternoon, sit stiffly on my couch, and make small talk about the weather or something they'd seen on the news. Emma would bring them her drawings, her stories, her little treasures, and they'd nod politely before setting them aside. It wasn't love, but it was something, and I was so desperate for something that I convinced myself it was enough. Until Emma's 7th birthday. I planned it for weeks. I wanted it to be perfect. Not extravagant, I couldn't afford extravagant, but special, meaningful. I rented a small community room at the park, invited her friends from school, ordered a cake decorated with butterflies because Emma was obsessed with butterflies that year. I bought streamers and balloons and spent an entire evening blowing them up by hand because I couldn't justify the cost of a helium tank. And I invited my parents. I called my mother 2 weeks in advance. Emma's birthday party is on the 15th, I told her. 2 o'clock at Riverside Park. I know it's not fancy, but it would mean the world to her if you and Dad could come. There was a pause. The kind of pause that makes your stomach drop. We'll try, Penelope, she said finally. Your father has a golf tournament that day. But we'll see. Try. We'll see. Words I'd heard my entire life. Words that meant no, but with just enough ambiguity that I couldn't call them liars. It's her birthday, Mom, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. She's turning 7. She talks about you guys all the time. She drew you a card. That's sweet. Her tone was flat, disinterested. We'll do our best. The week before the party, I sent my usual payment, $700. And then I sent a reminder text with the date, time, and location. My mother responded with a thumbs up emoji. That should have been my first clue. The day of the party, I woke up with a knot in my chest. Emma was bouncing off the walls with excitement, her little voice echoing through the apartment as she asked me 1,000 questions about who was coming and what games we'd play and whether Grandma and Grandpa would bring her a present. I don't know, baby, I said, forcing a smile as I braided her hair. But I know they love you very much. It was a lie, or maybe a hope. I wasn't sure anymore. We arrived at the park early to set up. Emma helped me tape streamers to the walls and arrange the chairs, her laughter filling the room like sunlight. Her friends started arriving, and the space transformed into chaos, beautiful, joyful chaos. Kids running and shrieking and shoving cake into their faces while parents chatted and took photos. But my eyes kept drifting to the door. 2 o'clock came and went. Then 2:30. Then 3. Emma asked about them twice. When are Grandma and Grandpa coming? Soon, sweetheart, I said, my throat tightening. They're probably just running late. By 4 o'clock. The party was winding down. Parents were collecting their kids, thanking me, telling Emma happy birthday one last time. She was exhausted, her face smudged with frosting, her new toys clutched in her arms. Did Grandma forget? She asked me quietly as we packed up the leftover decorations. I crouched down to her level, smoothing her curls away from her face. I'm sure they had a good reason, baby. They'll call and explain. Another lie. That night, after I put Emma to bed, I sat on my couch with my phone in my hand, staring at my mother's contact. My chest felt tight, my hands shaking with something I couldn't name. Anger, hurt, humiliation. I called her. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and casual. Penelope. Hi. You didn't come, I said. No preamble, no warmth. A pause. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Your father's golf tournament ran long, and by the time we got home, we were just exhausted. We'll take him out for ice cream next week. Something inside me cracked. You didn't even call, I said, my voice trembling. You didn't text. You didn't acknowledge her at all. She asked about you all day, Mom. She made you a card. Penelope, don't be dramatic. She's 7. She won't even remember this. I'll remember it. Silence. And then my mother said the words that shattered me. Your child means nothing to us, Penelope. She's your responsibility, not ours. We've done our part. We raised you. We don't owe you or her anything. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room tilted. My vision blurred. What? I whispered. You keep throwing money at us like it'll make us care more. But it won't. We appreciate the help, of course, but don't mistake financial support for obligation. We're not interested in playing grandparents. That's your fantasy, not ours. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember the next few hours at all. I just remember sitting in the dark, tears streaming down my face. Emma's hand-drawn card on the table in front of me. It had 2 stick figures labeled Grandma and Grandpa holding hands with a smaller figure labeled me above them. In crayon, she'd written, I love you so much. That's when I realized I'd been paying for nothing. I'd been bleeding myself dry for people who saw me as a bank account, who saw my daughter as an inconvenience, and I decided, right then, that I was done. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollowed out, like something vital had been scooped out of me and all that remained was a brittle shell. Emma crawled into bed with me, her small body warm and solid against mine, and whispered, Mama, why are you sad? I kissed the top of her head. I'm not sad, baby. I'm just tired. Are you sad about Grandma and Grandpa? My throat closed. No, sweetheart. I'm not sad about them. It wasn't a lie. I wasn't sad. Sadness required some thread of hope, some expectation that things could be different. What I felt was something colder, clearer. I felt free. That Monday, I went to my bank and canceled the automatic transfer. $700 a week. $36,400 a year. For 3 years, $109,200. I stared at that number on my laptop screen and felt sick. That was a down payment on a house. That was Emma's college fund. That was years of security I'd handed over to people who couldn't even show up for a child's birthday party. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Did you forget to send this week's payment? I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Angry ones. Hurt ones. Explanations they didn't deserve. Finally, I wrote. No. That was it. One word. I hit send and turned off my phone. For 3 days, silence. Then my mother called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. My father called once, which was remarkable considering he'd barely spoken to me in years. I didn't answer any of them. On the fourth day, my mother left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Penelope, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but your father and I need to talk to you. Call us back." I deleted it. A week passed. Then, too, my phone kept buzzing texts, calls, voicemails. The tone shifted from confusion to irritation to something sharper. Entitlement. Anger. "We raised you. You owe us. How dare you abandon us like this?" I read each message with a strange detachment, like I was reading about someone else's life. Then I blocked their numbers. The silence that followed was profound. It wasn't empty, it was full. Full of space. Full of air I didn't realize I'd been holding in my lungs for 32 years. I started sleeping better. I smiled more. I took Emma to the zoo, to the aquarium, to the little ice cream shop downtown where they let you sample every flavor. I enrolled her in a weekend art class she'd been begging for. I bought myself a new pair of shoes not because I needed them, but because I wanted them. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in survival mode. I was living, but my parents weren't done. 3 months after I cut them off, they showed up at my apartment. I was making dinner. Emma was coloring at the kitchen table, and there was a knock at the door. I opened it without thinking, and there they were. My mother in her pressed slacks and silk blouse. My father in his golf polo, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Penelope," my mother said, brushing past me without invitation. "We need to talk." Emma looked up, her eyes wide. "Grandma, Grandpa." She scrambled out of her chair, running toward them with that unguarded joy only children possess. My mother glanced down at her with something that might have been a smile but looked more like a wince. "Hello, Emma," she said stiffly. Emma wrapped her arms around my mother's legs. My mother didn't hug her back. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice flat. "We're here because you've been ignoring us," my father said, his tone sharp. "We've tried calling, texting, and I chose not to respond." My mother's eyes narrowed. "This is childish, Penelope. We don't know what's gotten into you, but this little tantrum of yours needs to stop." "Tantrum?" I repeated slowly. "You think this is a tantrum? What else would you call it? You stopped sending money without explanation. You block our numbers." "I stopped sending money because you told me my daughter means nothing to you." The room went still. Emma had gone back to her coloring, oblivious. But I saw my mother's jaw tighten. "I didn't mean it like that," she said. "Yes, you did. You're twisting my words. You said she means nothing to you. You said you're not interested in playing grandparents. Those were your exact words, Mom." I recorded the whole conversation in my memory because I couldn't believe you actually said it. My father shifted uncomfortably. Your mother was frustrated. "You've been demanding. I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "I invited you to one birthday party. One in 7 years. And you didn't come. You didn't call. You didn't apologize. You dismissed her like she was an inconvenience. She's not our responsibility." "I never asked you to take responsibility." My voice cracked louder than I intended. Emma looked up, startled. I forced myself to breathe, to lower my voice. "I just wanted you to care. I wanted you to show up. I paid you for 3 years thinking maybe it would make you want to be in our lives, and we appreciated that," my mother said quickly. "We still do. But you can't just stop because you're upset." "I can," I said quietly. And I did. My father's face darkened. "You're being selfish, Penelope. We've been counting on that money. We've made financial decisions based on it. That's not my problem. You owe us. I don't owe you anything." My voice was steady now, cold. "You didn't want me. You made that clear my entire life. And when I had Emma, you didn't want her either. But I kept trying. I kept hoping. I kept paying. Because I thought if I gave enough, if I did enough, you'd finally see me." My mother's expression shifted, something like guilt flickering across her face before hardening into defensiveness. "We did our best." "No, you didn't. Your best would have been showing up. Your best would have been calling on her birthday. Your best would have been treating her like she mattered. But she doesn't matter to you. And neither do I." Silence. Emma was watching us now, her crayon still in her hand, confusion written all over her little face. I think you should leave, I said. Penelope, leave. Now. My father grabbed my mother's arm, pulling her toward the door. She resisted for a moment, her mouth opening like she wanted to say something else, but no words came out. They left. I closed the door behind them and locked it. My hands were shaking. My chest was heaving. I felt like I'd just run a marathon. Mama? Emma's voice was small. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at you? I walked over to her, kneeling beside her chair, and pulled her into my arms. No, baby, they're not mad. Are you mad at them? I thought about that. Was I mad? Maybe once. But now? No, I said honestly. I'm just done. What does done mean? It means we're going to be okay. You and me. We're going to be just fine. She hugged me tighter, her little arms around my neck, and I felt something settle inside me. A quiet certainty. The weeks that followed were peaceful. My parents tried reaching out a few more times, emails, a letter in the mail, but I didn't respond. Eventually, they stopped, and then, 6 months after I cut them off, I got a call from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. Penelope, she said, her voice thick with disapproval. I heard what happened between you and your parents. Did you? I said flatly. Your mother is heartbroken. She said you cut them off without warning. That's not true. She said you stopped helping them financially, and now they're struggling. And Linda, I interrupted. Did my mother tell you what she said about Emma? Silence. Did she tell you she missed Emma's birthday party? Did she tell you she said my daughter means nothing to her? No, she didn't mention that. I didn't think so. My aunt cleared her throat. Even so, Penelope, they're your parents. Family is family. Family shows up, I said quietly. Family cares. Family doesn't treat you like a paycheck. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I sat down with Emma and told her the truth, age-appropriate, gentle, but honest. I told her that Grandma and Grandpa loved her in their own way, but they weren't going to be a big part of our lives anymore. That it wasn't her fault. That some people just don't know how to love the way we need them to. She cried a little. I cried a little. And then we made popcorn and watched her favorite movie, curled up on the couch together. 2 years passed. Emma turned 9, then 10. She thrived in art class, made close friends, started playing soccer. I got a promotion at work, started saving money for real, opened a college fund in her name. We moved into a small house with a backyard, and Emma planted a garden, tomatoes and sunflowers and wildflowers that bloomed in chaotic, beautiful tangles. I dated a little, nothing serious, but enough to remind myself I was still capable of connection, of trust. I built a life. And my parents? I heard things through the grapevine. My Aunt Linda mentioned they downsized, sold the Craftsman, moved into a condo. My mother had health issues, nothing life-threatening, but enough to slow her down. My father retired fully. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just nothing. Until Emma's 10th birthday. I threw her a party at our house, invited her friends, ordered too much pizza, let the kids run wild in the yard. It was loud and messy and perfect. And in the middle of it, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood my mother. She looked older, smaller somehow. Her hair was grayer, her shoulders hunched. She held a wrapped present in her hands. Penelope, she said softly, I know I have no right to be here. I stared at her, my hand still on the doorknob. I just wanted to give this to Emma, she continued. For her birthday. I won't stay. I wanted her to know I was thinking of her. Behind me, I heard Emma's laughter, high and bright. I looked at the present, then at my mother. Her eyes were wet. You told me she meant nothing to you, I said quietly. I know. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. I've been wrong about so many things. Why now? She hesitated. Because I'm running out of time to make it right. I didn't invite her in. I didn't forgive her. But I took the present. I'll give this to her, I said. But that's all, Mom. I can't let you back in. Not after everything. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand. She turned to leave, then paused. You were a good daughter, Penelope. Better than I deserved. And you're an incredible mother. I watched her walk down the driveway, get into her car, and drive away. When I went back inside, Emma asked who it was. Someone dropping off a present. I said. She opened it later, a wooden jewelry box with her name engraved on it. Inside was a note. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Love, Grandma. Emma looked at me confused. Is this from Grandma? Yes, baby. Why didn't she come inside? I knelt beside her. Because sometimes people realize they made mistakes, but it's too late to fix them. And that's okay. We're okay. She thought about that, then nodded. Yeah, we're okay. And we were. I never heard from my parents again. I don't know if my mother tried to reach out and I just never knew, or if that was her final goodbye. Either way, I didn't look back. The silence wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was choosing myself and my daughter over people who only saw us as obligations. Some people call it cold. Maybe it is. But sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is walk away from people who will never see your worth. I paid my parents $700 a week for 3 years, and in the end, the only thing I got in return was my freedom. That, I've learned, is priceless.